So we did a video on Pythagoras, which is being uploaded. I'll put it there shortly. And now let's look at trigonometry. And also what I'll do in this video is talk about how do we know which one to use. Do we use trigonometry or do we use Pythagoras? Let's give these a title as well. So this is Pythagoras on the left. And this one over here is trigonometry. Trigonometry. Now actually, this isn't just trigonometry because there are other harder aspects of trigonometry. So this is what we call basic trigonometry and also known as SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA. Now we'll talk about why it's called SOHCAHTOA fairly early on into the video. I will actually explain now why would we use one rather than the other. If we look at Pythagoras, we're looking at the lengths of the sides of the triangle, whereas when we look at basic trigonometry, SOHCAHTOA, we're involved in the lengths of the triangle, but we're also involved in the angle. So if you have been given an angle, or you're being asked to work out an angle, and it's a right angle triangle, then you probably want to use SOHCAHTOA. But if it's only lengths of the sides of the triangle and there's nothing about angles in the question, then you're probably going to be wanting to use Pythagoras. And for some questions, you might have to use a combination of the two if there involves more than one triangle. So that's the basic idea. Now with Pythagoras, there's just one formula, and what I did is I rearranged it into the three different how to find the three different variables within the formula. But in the SOHCAHTOA, there's actually three formulae, and on top of that, there's this weird thing called sine, cos, and tan. So on your scientific calculator, you'll have buttons that are written on it, sine, cos, and tan. They're more like they're not values. They're not things that, like if I, for example, you can try this on your calculator. You can try typing on your calculator sine 30. This does not mean sine times 30. In fact, it's quite good to put in brackets, and it's use a unit as well. Sine 30 degrees. If you did that on your calculator, you get the answer comes out as a half. Essentially, we can say that sine and cos and tan, they're all functions. Okay. Now, what is a function? Well, if you've not done functions yet, basically it's like a machine. So if I put in a value like 30 degrees, I get out another value, and in this case it's a half. Now you can actually run these machines in reverse, all these functions. So if I like imagine you pull a lever and it now runs in reverse, and to show that it's been running in reverse, it has this -1 symbol at the top, and we call that inverse sine. So now it goes backwards, so I can put a number in the other side like a half, and guess what I get out? I get 30 degrees. So we have the sine machine, or the sine function, the cos function, and the tan function and they can all be run in reverse. Now, how to use them then? So if I have a triangle like this, let's say that is 30 degrees. The angle is what this weird letter here is. So often and we'll talk about the sides as well. So like we use symbols to to label the sides, we can use a symbol that's not from the English or the Roman alphabet. This is from the Greek alphabet, and it's pronounced theta. But it's that the theta is just the name of the letter. That, like, the name of this letter is A, the name of this letter is B, and the name of this letter is C. The name of this letter is theta. It's a Greek letter. And we often use it to label angles. Okay, we don't have to. We could use a different label, but you'll generally see it labeled with this weird symbol here, which is pronounced theta. Now we have the three sides. Before, the longest side we labelled C, and the other two sides we labelled A and B. It didn't matter. In this case, we label the longest side, again opposite the right angle, not as C, but we label it as the hypotenuse, but often usually just written H. So what does this word hypotenuse mean? Well, let's just say it means the longest side of a right angle triangle. Okay, so we labeled it H. And then we have one that's labeled opposite. Why is it labeled opposite? Because it is opposite the angle that we're looking at. Okay, so we'd call that O. And then we have adjacent. Adjacent to means next to. So next to the angle, and we'd label that A. So we can see that sine theta would be equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. So if the opposite side here was, so this was 5, let's say it's 5 centimeters, and we wanted to work out this side here, then we have the opposite. I've been given the opposite, and I want to work out the hypotenuse, but I don't know anything about the adjacent, and I also am not being asked to find out anything about the adjacent. So I'm not interested in the adjacent, so I don't want this formula, and I don't want this formula. I want the sine formula, because I'm working with the opposite and the hypotenuse and an angle. So the fact that we're working with an angle tells me it's not Pythagoras, but it's basic trigonometry, or SOHCAHTOA. And the fact that we have opposite and hypotenuse tells me that it's sine. So we go, so this sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, SOH. This is where the SO comes from in SOHCAHTOA. CAH, this is the ka, and TOA, this is the TOA. So SOHCAHTOA is just a way of helping you to remember the formulae. Okay, so sine theta is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, cos theta is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse, ka, and tan theta is equal to opposite over adjacent TOA. And what we do when we look at this triangle is we're trying to work out, is it sine, cos, or tan? Well, it's O and H, so that sounds like O. Which one does that sound like? Well, it's obviously so therefore sine theta. So what we're saying is that sine 30 degrees is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Hang on, let's hang up on that. And that's going to be 5 over this mystery value, this mystery length. We'll just call it H. So we need to be able to rearrange this formula. So we can, I would probably multiply both sides by H. That gives me H sine 30 degrees is equal to 5 centimeters. And then divide both sides by sine 30. So H is equal to 5 over sine 5 centimeters over sine 30 degrees. And we found out earlier on that sine 30 degrees is equal to a half. But if it's a different angle, we just type in sine, whatever. If it was sine 45, for example, you'd type in sine 45 in your calculator. So it's going to be 5 centimeters divided by a half. If you put that in your calculator, you'll find out it is 10 centimeters. Now there is a quicker way to do it with a rearranging. If you imagine writing SOHCAHTOA and you lift up the middle one like that, and then you draw a triangle around it, then you've got a formula triangle. So and then you put your thumb over the top of whatever it is you want to work out. So we wanted to work out hypotenuse, so you cover up the hypotenuse, and we've got O over S, opposite over sine theta. If we wanted to work out the opposite, we cover up the opposite, and we've got sine theta times hypotenuse. And if we wanted to work out sine theta, we do opposite over hypotenuse. Now, what if we wanted to work out theta? Well, if I see that sine theta is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, this let's go back to this situation here. We now know the answer is the hypotenuse is 10 centimeters. Let's say I didn't know what this angle was, so we'll just call it theta. Then I can work out what sine theta is. Sine theta is equal to opposite of hypotenuse, 5 over 10, which is a half. But that's not what theta is, that's what sine theta is. So basically, I look at these, if I remind myself about these machines, sine theta is equal to a half. What's theta? What I need to do is put the half into the machine backwards. So on my calculator, if you press shift and sine, you should get the sine inverse sine. So what I do is to rearrange this formula, I would do inverse sine of both sides, and that would give me theta is equal to the inverse sine of a half. And put that into our calculator, as I said, which is going to give us 30 degrees. So that's an overview of trigonometry, and remember, depending on what you've been given, that will affect which equation you use, and then depending on what you need to find out, that will affect how you rearrange the equation. So you could use the formula triangle, or you could just rearrange it using standard algebra skills. So I've got the first video, which I shall put there, and I will save this video and we'll put that there, and then we'll have a go at some questions. Okay.